howdy ho. It's Sunday. Welcome back everyone to the stream. As usual, please let me know if the sound in the video checks out. It should be good. Also, as promised in the last Sunday service, I have uploaded the video of Rishi and Charlie eating the chimkin that your super chats purchased for them. And, of course, it was all of the super chats for the following reason. Cost of the rotisserie chicken, $6. Cost of the cleaning supplies needed to clean up in the aftermath of the rotisserie chicken, $60. Amount of work I got done yesterday because the dogs were hyper as hell, $0. So here we are. But it was hilarious and the video is very good and more people should watch it. All right. So, today's super chat goal will be, I'm not going to do chimkin this time because I want to avoid the diarrhea, but we're going to do a cat mukbang. Something that all four cats will get to go wild. So if you want to see Jupiter, Ra, Freya, and Osiris go crazy eating, I don't know, a fish maybe, something like that, I will, of course, have to ask my fiance as they are her cats. But we're going to do a cat mukbang, and it will be hilarious. By the way, man, you can't do anything on the internet without pissing people off. It is hilarious. I just posted yet that video is the sweetest, most hilarious, most positive energy, most wonderful, just pure serotonin hit, what dopamine, whatever it is, just pure bliss. And what are people? I gotta read this comment. It's so dumb. Hold on. People are mad about the Shiba video, which just goes to show it's like no matter what you do, somebody will be upset. Like I remember literally on Instagram, I saw somebody, or it was related to me, somebody posted like a pumpkin pie recipe. And in the comments, somebody was like, "You should know that I'm allergic to pumpkin. How dare you?" So yeah, we got this comment on the Shibas. "I've got bad news, Jason. The fact that your dogs are not vegan is highly problematic." I hate to ruin a fun, lighthearted video, but no, you don't. But we need to address this fearlessly. Okay, let's address it fearlessly. Chickens are not food. Really? And honestly, canines don't know better, but you do. I'm not going to continue to hammer down on this point, but you fucking better not. But let's consider all sentient beings in the future. Watching beasts tear at the flesh of another living being is not a treat. Okay, first of all, the chicken was dead. It was not living. Second of all, what the fuck is wrong with you? They're wolves, bro. They eat animals. They're wolves. They're literally wolves. Shiba Inus are like 1% genetic difference from East Asian wolves. They're literally dingoes, bro. So fucking chill. I sure hope that's a troll. So anyways, it makes me feel better though in a weird way because I get hate all day long, both online and offline, for what I believe are completely common sense opinions, like for instance, you shouldn't kill Jews. And if people are committing suicide attacks in your country, you should probably take a look at what's going on there just for self-preservation alone. And so, but I take it, yeah, dogs are not vegan. I mean, come on. Even dog kibble has chicken in it, okay? So it's like, if you feed dogs all vegetables, they're going to become malnourished and die. Let's hope it's a troll. I asked the person in the comment, are you serious? And his response was, "Are you laughing?" Yes, I am, at you. Hopefully it's a troll. So hopefully you can save face and say that this was a comedic attempt. All right. Anyways, actually, tell you what, let's ask the 8-ball. Was it a troll? Was it a troll magic 8-ball? Yes. Okay. Well, hopefully that's the case. The Magic 8-Ball says it was a troll, so there's still a chance to save face. But yes, it does make me feel slightly better in the sense it's just like, you know what? Like, you really should not take it personally if anyone gets mad at your opinions, because no matter what you say, somebody's going to be upset. Okay. Today, we are talking about the great, fairly well-known, but completely, I wouldn't even say misunderstood, but non-understood, Austin Osman Spare. So Austin Osman Spare is one of the most important magicians of the 20th century, along with Aleister Crowley. He was a contemporary of Crowley. It's quite likely they were lovers at one point. And although Spare joined Crowley's order, the AA, and then he left because he felt that it was pompous. And Spare is, of course, most famous and most known. Spare was an artist. He has a fascinating life story, which I'll get into in a second. But he's most known, of course, for inventing sigils. And sigils are, of course, a free-form magical technique in which you can encode any intent into your own occult symbol and then use it as a spell. And they work very, very well. And they're the common currency of magic in our time. Everyone into this, knows sigils. If you don't, you should. It's like the most basic magical technique there is, right? But it also cuts to the core of the entire process. So because of that, Austin Spare is considered the grandfather of chaos magic, because of the sigil method, and also because of his ideas on belief shifting. But I will argue, having been involved in chaos magic for a long time, that the early chaos magicians like Peter Carroll and Ray Sherwin took a few of Spare's ideas, like sigils, the alphabet of desire, Kia, and belief shifting, but they took it completely out of context and didn't look at anything else. Case in point, they took Kia but not Zos, which is the other part of the Zos Kia formula, right? So Spare, one of the reasons why people have not fully assessed Spare is because he's A, hard to understand, and B, disturbing. Because I consider Spare to be very much like an Agori in the Eastern traditions. He had his view of magic was fundamentally rooted in witchcraft rather than ceremonial magic or Kabbalah. It was very naturalistic, and Spare was all about essentially embracing everything in life that people have rejected and seeing the beauty in everything. And that's a very, very Agora approach. And we don't have to get into the details of that, but yeah, he was a pretty eccentric guy. So I'm going to share a bit more about him. He's a fascinating life story. He was an artistic prodigy in his late teens and he was very much in line with Aubrey Beardsley. If you know, Aubrey Beardsley was a classic, Gothic illustrator from the Victorian era, whose art was so popular that it came to almost define the aesthetic of the age. Of course, when art styles become that popular, the downside is that they can quickly become cliche. And so what happened with Spare is, as in his teen years, when he was as you can see, a very Beardsley-esque illustrator, up until the age of 25, he was considered a big deal. He got, I believe, art scholarships. He got a show. He was able to show his art. He was written up in the press as a young genius. And then I think by the time he turned 25, it all vanished. A big part of that was that the artistic style he was working in was no longer fashionable. The world moved on, right? The Beardsley-esque things quickly became cliche and were no longer interesting to society. So Spare, despite being essentially an early bloomer and an early genius, spent the rest of his life in extreme poverty in South London. He was surrounded by stray cats. He had, I think, like 60 stray cats or something like that. He lived in a basement, and he was the type of guy that would go to pubs and draw portraits of people for drinks, right? Like that's kind of how he got by. And he would take commissions. So he also made money that way. So hilariously, he even took commissions later in life from people like Judy Garland, right? Pretty hilarious bit of history. He was also a war illustrator in World War I, and his experiences in the trenches profoundly I think probably profoundly traumatized and shaped his view of the world. His early view of the world was formed, I think, not just by that, but by the fact that he grew up in his early life, in his childhood. He grew up next to a meat market in South London. So out the window, he would just see butchering of animals constantly and meat, and it kind of like this Francis Bacon-esque, nightmare vision of the world, or Earth Inferno, as he put it, of all life consuming all life. Right, or perhaps as Nietzsche would have put it, the slaughter bench of history. So he's an interesting cat, and his magical style was probably a little bit too real. He was considered to be the only person in the London occult scene in the 30s that could actually get it to work. And when these goofballs, LARPers, as London is still full of. There's lots of magicians I love in London. For instance, Scarlet Imprint. Well, they're out of London, but there's lots of English occult people that I love. But there's a lot, you got to admit, that are pretty annoying, and look like literally the shopkeepers from Royston Vasey in League of Gentlemen, if you've ever seen that show. So, but he was considered when these LARPers were like doing their goof ass magical wars with each other, they would go to Spare for talismans to actually curse somebody. And he was the only person that was considered to actually be able to do the business, as they put it. And Spare still has that kind of fearsome reputation. Spare was completely forgotten. He died in the 50s. And the only reason he's remembered now is because of Kenneth Grant, who was Aleister Crowley's student and secretary, who studied with Crowley until Crowley died, and then did not complete his training, and then 10 years later met Spare, and he and his wife Steffi Grant studied under Spare at that point. A lot of what people think of as Spare's magical system, or what he was saying, a lot of it was probably elaborated and created by Kenneth Grant. So in order to understand Spare, you have to actually read him. And the issue with reading him is he's not very hard. He can be hard to get your head around unless you're more advanced in magic. But I think we're going to have a good time. In order to really understand Spare, you need to look at his paintings. His painting style was essentially to depict other worlds. And he had a very unique art style called sidereal art. Sidereal meaning of the stars, where everything kind of twists slightly skew-wise, like this, and it looks distorted and otherworldly, like a portal to another world, and it is still quite affecting. Spare was also brought to mass consciousness by my mentor Genesis Peorage, who at the time in the early industrial days, in the 70s with Robin Gristle, was able to buy quite a lot of Spare's paintings from the famous Atlantis bookshop, which is right next to the British Museum in London, which is a phenomenal shop. I actually bought this book there. We even have the Atlantis sticker there, for those who know that, from Geraldine Beskin, who's has always been a phenomenal stalwart of the occult community and center of it. A very, very nice person. She had some encouraging words for me early on, and I think that anyone involved in the occult world who has been in London or part of the London occult world probably has had similar experiences. She's very cool. So, but in the 70s, Jen was saying he was getting Spare paintings for like 20 pounds. Right, because nobody knew or cared about Spare. Now, good luck getting them. Good luck, right? They're all in the hands of wealthy private collectors. So, but it was because of Jen took the sigil idea and made that the central core of Topi, Temple of Psychic Youth, and made it famous in the industrial music world. And it was from, and also chaos magic was happening around the same time. It was from that, it was only from there that the sigil method got out on the internet in the 90s and was later further popularized by people like Grant Morrison and so forth. And now it's common currency. But unlike Crowley, who put together these unbelievably elaborate and difficult ideological structures and structures of ritualistic structures, Spare basically just went to open-handed magic and cut to the core of the whole thing. And one of the reasons why I love Spare is he had no nice words about anyone, particularly the London occult scene. We may get to it in the Book of Pleasure. His line about ceremonial magicians with all their pomp and circumstance, like Mom's Basement Marco, was, these ceremonial magicians are meant to, they are but the dandies of the brothels, the unemployed dandies of the brothels, he said. And I've never forgotten this line. He says, "Were I to crown myself king, would I be king? Were I to crown myself king, would I be king?" And what he's talking about there is the tendency of ritualistic and ceremonial magicians for all this pomp and circumstances. You see this like at the OTO, where they dress themselves up as gods and god forms and do all this elaborate temple work with robes and, swords and wands and titles and badges and grades and hierarchies. And the idea is to raise consciousness to, some higher state. But Spare cuts through all of that with one line. "Were I to crown myself king, would I be king?" Meaning, y'all LARPers. Y'all are LARPers in Jason language. And I love that. And nothing's changed. Okay, so that would be Spare. But of course, before we move on, it's time for Evil Brotherhood Tracker. All right, so let's see what we have had this week in the world of religious fundamentalism and extremism. And by the way, I don't necessarily, this section is not necessarily about singling out Islam. It's just that they get all the headlines because they're the most active. We should also be talking about in this section extremism in other religions. Well, extremism particularly in extremist Christian groups. But there's just not a whole lot of that going on compared to the other guys. And, my general view of Christianity is, if it works for you, great. I don't have any issue with Christianity. I don't. And most Christians are Ned Flanders. It's like they have, they have something that works for them, that makes them happy, that makes their life meaningful. And the same as I feel with anyone, as long as you're not pushing your opinions on me, fine. I'm not going to push my opinions on you. And if you don't push my opinions on me, then I'm sure we can find lots of commonality and just chill as people. And Christians tend to be really, really nice. So what's the issue? They're not cutting people's heads off. They're not driving trucks through crowds. They're not trying to colonize. It's so while I don't want this is the religious extremism watch section, but you got to admit, one group is kind of the MVPs in that area. And for proof of that, for quantitative proof, you can go back to the video I did about the 2025 terrorism index, where all 20 groups in global terror were all Islamist. Okay. That's just how it is. That's 2025. That's the world we're dealing with. I didn't make it up. I wish it wasn't like this, but I'm sure not going to keep my mouth shut and bend over in submission like most do. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've got here. Extremism watch section. But this week, you got to admit, one group is kind of the MVPs in that area. And let's start for proof of that. I can't remember where we got quantitative proof. You can go back to the video I did about the 2025 terrorism index, where all 20 groups in global terror were all Islamist. Nigeria. Members of that's just how it is. That's 2025. That's the world we're dealing with. I didn't make it up. Same day in Burkina Faso. Like this. By the way, a lot of I'm sure not going to keep my mouth in Africa. But do people care about Africa? Do they talk about Africa on the news? So do they know what the countries in Africa are? Do they know the history of Africa? Do they know the conflict between different groups? Do they even know that Islam has taken one group is kind of the MVP? No, because Western media doesn't proof of that. I can't remember. And you can draw your own conclusions about why that is. So I would argue that on the terrorism index, where all 20 groups in global terror. Oops. Okay, sounds looping. Oh boy. God damn it. This happens every time. All right, let me back up. I got it. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so all right, hopefully you understood that. Next time, I promise I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it right. It's because when I put up the screen capture, it is also capturing system audio. That's why that looping happens. And then I'm getting double input from the mic and from the computer audio. So I apologize. Okay. So what do we got? Yeah, March 28th, Nigeria. Members of a prominent Shiite group attack and kill a local officer. Burkina Faso. At least 24 others are left dead following a jihadist attack. So basically the point I was making while I was looping is Western media is racist because it does not cover Africa, care about Africa, or know anything about Africa. And that's about the biggest oversight ever, because Africa is largely where the future is being decided right now, because there's all these different countries and groups are involved in a new resource grab in Africa, which is quite tragic in many ways. At the same time, West Africa, like Ghana, is becoming an economic and a digital powerhouse, right? Even Jack Dorsey, ex-prior CEO of Twitter, has been over there doing crypto stuff in West Africa and sees it as the future. I think it's very likely that we may enter a tripolar world, not just the West and the BRICS nations, but also Africa. It's quite possible. So people ignore Africa at their own peril. It's an unbelievably complex continent. It's like the biggest continent. It's unbelievably, well, is it? I don't know. It's pretty big. Maybe if you count Europe and Russia and Asia as one landmass, maybe not. But it's gigantic. And the history is it actually may be the biggest. Its history is so long and so fascinating, like tens of thousands of years, right? The dawn of humanity, Egypt, Ghana, Benin, South Africa. There's so much going on. Algeria. Northern Africa, Morocco, Madagascar. There's so much going on in Africa. How much do you hear about it? Nothing. Anyways, so I pretty much talk about it in every stream because unfortunately that's where a lot of the extremist violence is happening because of Islam. Okay. Also, March 31st, Syria, Sunni hardliners execute a half dozen Shiites. I'm sure that had everything to do with Israel and America. Same day in Syria, a woman and her 3 children are among 6 brutally killed in their own home by HTS loyalists. That's horrible. And then April 4th, so 2 days ago in India, a Muslim mob lynches a young man for burning a copy of the Quran. How dare he? And then just today in Nigeria, 2 village guards are shot dead by Boko Haram, which is one of the biggest jihadi groups operating in Africa. And also, did you hear about the protests in Palestine? I'm guessing probably not. But the Gazans, the Palestinians, have been openly protesting against Hamas and blaming them for the carnage that is happening there, which is correct because their own elected leadership sold them out as cannon fodder in the wider war of the Iranian and Islamic war against Israel. They don't care about them. And this is important to see, come on now, what the hell is this? Okay, so one of the heads of the protests, you probably didn't hear about this either, Ode Nasser al-Rabi, was kidnapped, tortured, and executed for demonstrating body left at family doorstep, doesn't seen at funeral chanting Hamas out. So yes, Hamas operatives kidnapped, tortured, and executed a 22-year-old Palestinian man who participated in last week's wave of protest against the terror group, according to his family. Ode Nasser al-Rabi's body was left in front of his family's home over the weekend. On Saturday, many dozens were filmed participating in his funeral procession, shouting Hamas out. Hamas has reportedly been threatening Palestinians who participate in the protest against the terror group, but this appears to be the first time that anyone has been killed in connection to them. Protests were held for 3 straight days last week, but none were held over the weekend amid assessments in Israel that Hamas was intimidating protesters. So there you go. And I'll just ask you a question, okay? We don't need to get into ideology or saying who's right, who's wrong, but I want to ask you 2 questions. One is, if Hamas actually wants a ceasefire, why have they not returned the hostages? Because if they return the hostages, the war would be over. It would. And again, it's this simple. If Hamas laid down their arms and their hostages, the war would be over today. If Israel laid down its arms they would be genocided by the entire surrounding Islamic world, not just Hamas, but Yemen, Iran, and so on. And so ISIS, Lebanon, Hezbollah, so on and so forth. Okay, my second question is, if Hamas is so concerned about their casualties, why don't they let the civilians into the tunnels? Because the tunnels are for Hamas and the tunnels are for weapons. And even after almost 2 years of this war, they don't care about the civilians. And the reason they don't care about the civilians is because they want all that footage and all those news stories about Red Cross paramedics being shot. By the way, not just Hamas, but prior to them, the PLO, all kinds of groups have used combatants in Red Cross trucks, right? Because they know that when it's a double whammy. They know that Israel, they can get them further, that Israel is held back by humanitarian things. And they know that if Israel kills those people, then they can go and say on the world stage, look, they're killing journalists, they're killing medics, all that, right? So there's a lot of dirty dealings here. And again, if they cared so much, why don't they let the civilians into the tunnels? Because they don't want the civilians there. They don't care about the civilians. People in the West need to, and I will get off this in a second, but people in the West do not understand the logic of terrorism. And that's good, because in a sense, because we don't have to deal with it every day like certain countries do. And we haven't seen that type of fanaticism and absolute commitment to evil and destruction since, I don't know, maybe the Nazis, right? So, and that's not within anyone's living memory for the most part, right? So it isn't for some people, but increasingly few. So we don't understand the logic of terrorism. We don't understand the level of cynicism that terrorists operate under. We don't understand that they want their civilians to die. And we can't fathom things like, for instance, even Hassan Nasrallah standing at the bed of his dead, martyred son who died in Gaza and smiling, and his mother smiling and basically cheering for him that he died a martyr. They don't understand. They can't watch videos of Palestinian mothers going on and on about how they want their children to die as martyrs. That's their greatest hope for their children. Is that caused by occupation? No, it's caused by extremism. It's caused by religious extremism, lack of education, and the fact that the Gazans have been, or Hamas has been training children to be fighters and suicide bombers since kindergarten. Okay, that's all I'm going to say, and then we'll get off this topic. Just consider that. All right. I'm going to grab a soda in 20 seconds flat, and then we will begin Austin Osman Spare. Okay, thank you so much for your patience. Let's begin. So this, I don't believe this is in print anymore, but this was a series. There was actually a series, I should get the other ones, of spare books done by IHO Press. I don't know if they're still in business or not, but they did this in 2004, and this contains 4 of Spare's writings: Micrologus, The Book of Pleasure, The Witch's Sabbath, and Mind to Mind and How by a Sorcerer. So we're going to do bits and pieces here. Right? There's some of Spare's art right there. The more you look at it, the more sinister it becomes, a swirling vortex to God knows where. All right. There's a few notes from him here opening it. So this is great. Dedicated to he that wills, and to him that asks. So parse this. Any philosophy, thesis, or style degenerates pro rata to the number who embrace it. What does pro rata mean? Let's make sure we understand that. One of the only good ideas, well, actually he had a lot of good ideas. One of the ideas that L. Ron Hubbard came up with that's actually useful is every time you're reading and you come across a word you don't understand, look it up. It's simple, but people don't do it. You learn a lot really quick that way. Okay, so in rata, pro rata means in proportion. So any philosophy, thesis, or style degenerates in proportion to the number who embrace it. I mean, we could spend this whole section just on that one sentence, right? Meaning, any philosophy, thesis, or style, so philosophy, religion, idea, fashion, art style, degenerates and gets worse the more people who are into it. Okay. Now he comes with the solution. Thou art the way. I would ask of thee, thy suppressed self, is it not the new thing desired? The search is to be known only to the seeker. It is not to be taught, but only to be learned. No man shall follow me. I am not thy preservation. The deepest secret is always hidden, even though it be displayed openly to the public or cried from rooftops. All poetry deals more or less in the common form. This common coin, this circulating fluid of idea and image and phrase, and that it is the very ethos, nay, the very essence of the poet to make the common as if it were not common. Leaving aside all unreal dreams, consider this world as insincere disbelief. I love that. Insincere disbelief. Enmeshed in an elaborate network of religious, metaphysical, or philosophical ideas, and which attracts not so much admirers as devotees. Let me read that again. Leaving aside all unreal dreams, consider this world as insincere disbelief, enmeshed in an elaborate network of religious, metaphysical, or philosophical ideas, and which attracts not so much admirers as devotees. Whosoever follows me becomes his own enemy. For in that day my exigency shall be his ruin. What does exigency mean? Let's look it up. This is a very good practice. Thank you, Elron. He wasn't all bad, although he became all bad later. He became 100% bad. But he had some good ideas at the beginning. So exigency means an urgent need or demand. Whosoever follows me becomes his own enemy, for in that day my urgent need shall be his ruin. My demand shall be his ruin. Go labor. Fulfill the disgust of becoming yourself, of discovering your beliefs, and thus acquire virtue. I love that. That's completely contrary to the kind of idea of like, oh, just, follow your bliss, find your true self, all of this. Like here, he makes no bones about it. He doesn't say you're gonna live your best life. He says, fulfill the disgust of becoming yourself, of discovering your beliefs, and thus acquire virtue. So much is said in that one sentence. So much. And now he says, as to the title of this, any part of a whole derives its ethos from the whole, and when so posited will function as a whole. The ethos of language should be unequivocal meaning in any rational semantical system with the least possible ambiguous syntax. Truth is the ethos of our vast emotional complex reared on the structure of the ids. Our thought patterns result from quantitative aggregations, gradations, variations, juxtapositionings, and proportionings derived from our inherent ethos. Spare was also very much into Freud. He was into Cornelius Agrippa's 4 books of occult philosophy, which is quite likely where he got the sigil idea or refined the sigil idea from. But he was also very into Freud. And for Spare, I think quite likely prior to Dion Fortune, although Dion Fortune had psychological training whereas Spare did not, Spare's basic idea was that all magical power is in the unconscious. And which is basically like an undiscovered new territory. Society considered it like an undiscovered new country when Freud began to publicize that idea. And this fascinated the intellectuals of the world, including Crowley. But Spare went so far as to say that all magical power is buried in the unconscious and is basically kept inaccessible by the conscious mind. And so most of his magical techniques, much like the sigil, which is the primary example, were methods of bypassing the conscious mind to get to the unconscious strata, in which are dreams, visions, hallucinations, and magic. Okay. Let us begin with Micrologus. And let's look that up. What does that mean? how strange. So the Micrologus, the original Micrologus, was a treatise on medieval music written by Guido of Arezzo dating to 1026. It outlines, the treatise discusses modified parallel organum as well as free organum. Organum is a plain chant melody with at least one voice added to enhance the harmony. This was a primary musical style in the Middle Ages. The examples given are in two voices set note against note. Interesting. So it's basically about two people, I would guess. It's like two people singing in plain chant melody. Interesting. Okay. And this is, of course, attributed to his magical name, Zos Thanatos. So Zos means hand in Spare's language, and Thanatos means death, so hand of death. Micrologus. This is not a very well-known writing by him. Book of Pleasures is most famous. Pathopsychology has birthed another Frankenstein. By idiocracies become hypocrisies with their own environmental facades, to ornament the suppression and what they suppress, to excuse, shift blame from the old arch vices, insatiable greed and furtive ferocity. Believe it or not, there is such a thing as wickedness. By the way, I recommend listening without your logical mind. I recommend just letting it hit you. Listen with your unconscious. There is a third eye. To paraphrase, let not thy right eye seeth what the left seeth, would be a distinction without much difference, except for our willful blindness to all committed self-deceptions. They are seen and recorded by the inner eye. You may delude your foreconsciousness, but not what is far beneath. So consider this like a sigil, and just let it hit you. And let it be buried in your unconscious and bear its own fruit in time. The main premise of religion is the demanding of complete acceptance by faith of some dogmatic thesis and conclusion. That, as if, explains the abstracts and mysteries of life. And as proof, the assertion that their God or cause, as being so miraculous in his workings to be beyond human comprehension, to override your bafflement of all contradictions and incongruities. I admit nature accomplishes the impossible. Has she not created man? If you can so delude yourself and stomach this stuff, it partially works, which means that the poorest, as if connotation is better than non-belief, and gives something, if only a shadowy postulation in death, or a palliative by psychoparalysis in life. He speaks truthfully and saith, I know not, and I speak truthfully, I know not my omniscience. Hear now, the saviors with their incredulous assertions, platitudinous, jittery, and frenetic asseverations, heaven and eternal life, in exchange for belief in the vicarious atonement of the blood, or be damned. Such a wishful bellyful has never worked yet, or any other absurdities of iniquitous credulity. Stinks. Therefore pray not direct to God, but to your own damned self. Therefore pray not direct to God, but to your own damned self. By sacrifice and service to man, it is the only correct manner of prayer, and none so poor that they cannot so give. All other forms of prayer are abortive, merely a ritualistic appreciation. Interesting, because Christ says something similar in the New Testament, but he's saying to pray to him. Spare is saying to pray to yourself. But they both agree that elaborate ritual is nonsense, and in fact blocks magic. Christ says the same thing. The only answering forces of good that I know originate from man, and the only force of evil that I know radiates from man also. If the evil thoughts of man were able to break through our protective auras, human life would end. Interesting. If the evil thoughts of man were able to break through our protective auras, human life would end. Especially these days. All prayer dissipates without an intermediary or carrier. God's soul and the psychosubstantive seem to respond only through the mind by indirection and heterosuggestion. This is the secret way through many barriers. So there he's talking about the sigil mechanism. The mind is potent, still the deadliest weapon, or the reverse. I ask, what greater gift could any god give us? Only ourselves as free individuals, not so much to hate and love as to excel ourselves. Psychology is now the equal of any other dogma, inasmuch as it demands the full acceptance of rigid conclusions from undefined qualities and premises. Psychology has no dominant thesis or definition of such fundamentals as consciousness, intelligence, thought, purpose, etc. We are aware that there are no exact or final definitions or conclusions of anything, but we are also aware that certain correct hypotheses, one, such as regarding the ether, which, by the way, was a common hypothesis, a scientific hypothesis at the early part of the 20th century, that there was a fifth element or ether in which everything moved. It's now been since disproven, but now we have things like dark matter and so on. So in a sense, you could say that it's kind of come back in that way. The offer of such very shaky nominalism, which begins nowhere and ends in an excusing pathology, presents a worse gamble than that of any religion. Psychoism has no standard of morality, behaviorism, or normality, with which it mainly deals, so must be based on the common mean, the average, an inelastic average at that. Thus, anything abnormal or subnormal could or might be patho, shit. And when the common denominators are realized from the id of greed, then where are we? The zombie, our level? Genius, a madness? No. For civilization, there must be a more arbitrary, ethical, intelligent standard above the normalities, an ideal that is tactual, that is directly related to reality, with its integral precisions determined by social motivation. Conventions, whether of morals or behavior, may be as wise as anything man has invented. Man ever aberrates, even his normalities, mainly to compensate for his deficiencies, and often finds there a shadow world that accepts and reflects the assured survival of his weaknesses. Words, 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 however used, whatever they symbolize, request, or tell, say more, showing in between the antics of all motives. Yes, word rendering offers the quickest of deaths to flabby ideas, and also the most poignant, suggestive, contagious, substitutive, and lasting means known to convey anything. Most deadly virus, most potent abcreation and magic subtlety. Even your erasure has you believing. We are overstuffed with words, now a veritable systole and diastole of mind. Whether or not we correctly articulate, we suffer postprandial torpor. Neither universe nor man is complete, completing, or dissolving, but only resurging and reindulging, existing forms reshaping to function new pleasures of flesh impacting flesh. At least, so I imagine. Who loves fat women? Spare was big on that. He was like the Leonard Nimoy of his day. Only man invades. Spare was famous for being erotically fixated on women that average people would overlook. And he's quite fascinating in that way. He wrote a whole book about it called The Book of Ugly Ecstasy. He saw that as a path to transcendence almost. Only man invades as a build-up, for excuse, for courage, for some enactment or the exacting. We are a great company. None walk alone, but with a formidable host of familiars, however we may clothe, shut out, or prohibit. There is a veritable funeral procession of dead selves and loves always in attendance. Truer when you get older. Here we are. The ugly ecstasies. The mass of mankind are fixed adolescents, sex-obsessed, and making of the thing a messy or obscene commonplace, a mephitic bathos from ill-used passions and emotions. Yet procreation is a mystery, but holds no greater mystery than breathing. Both are life, initial and fundamental. Yes, the mystic union is now a mere dirty copulation. What stupidities benight the assertion that anything was created, unrelated to all else? If things were entirely separate, complete, they would be static and quickly exhaust. Life, growth, change, into and out of things to all transmutations possible, all things serve each other, willingly or otherwise. Yet we live by every means of partitiveness. Make our ignorance as permanent as possible, and nothing seems more lasting than a lie. Life is a potency, becoming selected indulgences, a path through the chaos we make. How soon fearing, shocked, cry out for salvation and backslide to some old mothering or protectiveness, no escape. For to breathe the human smell, touch the hirsute flesh, shall again adventure, must transgress. Hirsute means hairy. For to breathe the human smell, touch the hirsute flesh, shall again adventure, must transgress. Compensating mechanism often demand an antithesis to balance or fulfill, as with character and temperament, an ideal union being the masculine woman and the effeminate man. Words have lost their pristine power, now impressing as on a queechy surface. They become an ambiguous way of knowing and fourth-hand experiencing, because one's reactions to events can never be formed or apprised from another's. Queerly, most people believe what they read or hear, if written or spoken, rigorously or as authoritatively, yet human credulity has more virtue than of absurdity. We are millions of yesterdays, and what appears autogenic is the work of unknown mediators who permit, or not, our acts by the mysterious chemistry of our believing. Beauty alone reaches simplicity because it is basic economy. Envy over-adorns, paints, ostentatiously clothes, and transfers to mode. The naked figure is a more fluid and truthful beauty. Hence, to marry a face is often to marry a fiction. Our work and behavior is the truer portrait, the value we live and give by. When thought disassociates from the correspondences and gradations between contrasting things, these will reform abundantly with new correlatives as emotional content in our resultant process of rearrangements. Final representation is an asymmetrical balance. This seeing strangely is the level of our genius. Reasoning and its inferences are a screever's logic and useless to put us in contact with reality. All reality being more abstract than actual as a para-ideal we know of but cannot grasp. The nearest we attain to it is by a unison of all the senses that appreciates by personal sentiment, can, by suitable emotional channeling, be effective and associate and express any nuances and abstracts which cannot be defined in thought, an unplanned, latent portraying, as in nature. All religion is suffering/sufferance. Prayer is a false separation. Immanence is always here. That's critical. I'm going to read that again. Think about this. Prayer is a false separation. Immanence is always here. So immanence means the divine existing within the world. It's the Eastern way of seeing things, that the world is divine, that heaven is here, that samsara is Maya, that samsara is nirvana, that Malkuth is in Kether, as Kether is in Malkuth. So let me repeat this. All religion is suffering/sufferance. Prayer is a false separation. Immanence is always here. Only the refrangible comes through, a filtrated quasi-reality. Not the thing itself, the noumenon of mind, is seemingly susceptible only by partitiveness as phenomenal form. Thus all our awareness is reflected, partitive, and with a linear I as consciousness, and so motivates our faculties into actuations. But over and above this, we have that queer feeling which extends and attempts to get behind and rationalize the unclarifiable. But we never do. Being dimensionally chained and bed companion to our Mrs. God or misused id. There is nothing self-potential in creation, including our Creator. The frowsy hermaphrodites are unsurviving, improvised transients. The division of self from self was a diversity for variety, and soon all animation becomes presence, noetic and numerous. Therefore, it is better to speak of the gods than of a singular. Belief is a sustenance, desire acquisitive, and will energizes and maintains. Their close unison gives ability, and the measure of our sincerity, creative when spontaneous. First, the suppressions to create the tension, then the dramatic release. One damned thing after another. Life and death is an entering and leaving of different dream worlds, and reality is where we find or make it. Our fictionalism and factualism are equally false or true. We believe what we desire to believe, usually a disguised motivation of egotism, or to dream compensations, our poor panacea for the irreducible id plus I. The frequency of time we relate is our measure of space, and works inversely. Apperception, digestion, and gestation are slow. To believe and accept everything, all contradictions, even unto the most incredulous, to believe the Immaculate Conception with cheap salvation and the whole shoot of such religions is an impossible ideal. Belief must be limited, to have depth and meaning. No, there is rumination, regurgitation, final vomiting, not yet the limitless stomach. So this has a few more pages, and then we will check super chats. The only quick change artistry we perform is the taking off and putting on again of some protectiveness, deceit, or disguise. Refusing reality, we must make one and show off. Over-exuberance is a satisfaction and the beginning of rococo and decay. Too much freedom overruns itself, flops, and turns to vicious disease or trivia. All teaching should be confined to ways of learning and techniques. We live inside churches and schools too long. Our efforts are mainly to re-experience, to make probable and permanent those things we like and desire most. Whereas mind, that's a great definition of magic, actually. Our efforts are mainly to re-experience, or results magic at least, to make probable and permanent those things we like and desire most. Whereas mind and body reshapes, for other powers to serve their purpose first. A life of pleasure is impossible. All promiscuity is now filthy. So few understand pleasuring by innocent unchastities. The unhealthy conscience forces forgetfulness, and the essential smothering of your anti-sociability to appear conventionally possible. Our next incarnation is always a revival, to extend, to envelop something, and a greater shutting out, survival by differential revival, crediting and repaying to reborrow. Pledged we are. The anxiety of the ultra-modern is of being outmoded by the next idiom, usually a revival or variation of a forgotten one as something new. Yeah, that's more true than ever. It happens a lot quicker. Praise or blame deceives and would make us inferior when, as confirming our false and true values, we should only be influenced from a personal and innermost feeling of appertenance over and above such things, to make our great simplicity to equal all. To walk the safest way of least resistance, we cheaply familiarize ourselves and become insensitive, sterile, so to the unfamiliar and all jungles. To follow the bellwether is still the most universal and successful gospel. It is the empirical, sometimes accidental meaning and beauty of nature, as well as the overlooked obvious that art portrays. To become oblique is one answer, but our minds have heaped up cliches, self-coined, borrowed, or inherited, mostly spurious. So stultified, not by limits of language nor so tongue-tied, we fail through falsities and half-believing, fears bred of cramped growth, obedience to uninspired patterning, and lose our impassioned creativeness by accepting easy conventions, idioms, and shoddy imitations. Those of real ability count their consummations as still lacking, hence they are always learning. We hate and love ourselves only through others. Heaven help us, looking only for our likenesses. We exhibit inferiority and pretension when we congratulate ourselves as lacking the defects of others. So rightly or wrongly, I think this. What was once free, casual, and formless seeks arbitrary laws, precipitated into time and dimensional form with definite functional purpose and direction, about which we can only guess, to realize all probabilities within definite limits that so far are unlimited. These extend and allow formative desire through necessity to realize by excreative means. How much or how little is bound up in a mystic belief of ourselves, we only know as possible potency. In our relation to cosmos, if significance is measured by our increative ability, then we are of no greater worth than the amoeba. Nature permits no interrogation. Our techniques merely imitate, and only when so allowed. The function and purpose of life almost seems an experiment in genius, a chosen few at one time. Our early acceptance of things as they are, as dominant reality, later becomes overshadowed by doubt, and we conclude that evil is real, potent, and contra to almightiness. But lest we forget, there was no evil until man's advent, and thereby a certain madness is seeking a rational explanation of life. Things totally without knowledge seem to function perfectly, and are alone beyond good and evil. Knowledge precludes, like Shiba Inus for instance, knowledge precludes the acceptance of all things. The beginning of knowledge is not the discovery of our own ignorance, but the acceptance of all. An equation always equal becomes its own good and evil, and those born of great ability also have a profound ignorance of how they accomplish and learn what explanation they can give. How do they know what they know? Ability is an endowment from our past selves. The infinite cosmos, the Milky Way, and all therein, manifest as from organism, and so all things continue. There are no alternatives or different derivatives, so without truth are such assertions that we did not originate ourselves of our own free will, or otherwise. Our amnesia covers so much. All our early history and potentials, now latent, unknown, yet what were unities, truth, freedom, etc., are now separate, untrue, powerless, or appear diversely, all vice versas. But the eternal, ever-varying flux of our media relatability is as the ebb and flow of our capacity towards greater affinity to all possibilities within the ever-omnipresent mind as manifest flesh. The ever-omnipresent mind as manifest flesh. Where there is life, there is a degree of consciousness, however shadowy, with all its interrelating potencies. When the uniform homogeneity of matter breaks or divides, activity manifests as multiples, and individual modifications begin. Concurrently, a subtle superfetation occurs, which forms our media for ubiquitary minds and becomes our ego, then soul. We are always a functional throwback, the articulation of past latencies. The complex development of body becomes a more elastic medium for ego, mind, and soul to work through. The purpose of life appears as the conversation of matter from the collective uniform, stinking lump, into a specialized separateness, e.g., a diversity of individuals. Hence, there is no universal brotherhood based on equality, just the reverse. Whatever our claims concerning interrelatedness, this is governed not only by heritage, but by aptitude. Ability, indeed, has to be deserved the hard way, the way of techniques and effort. The body is the puppet of the mind. We begin as automatic, becoming as autonomous, a transference. The puppet becomes the showman. All our integrations stem from our intro/extrovertive ability, a mental breathing, give, take, and remake. There you have Micrologus. Let's take a look at what people are saying in the super chats. All right. All right. So we got 3 super chats. Thank you, Donovan. Thank you, Jacobus. And was there another one? Thank you, Richard Devine. Coming in strong again. The crew's all here. Much appreciated. 7 more, and we get a cat mukbang. All right. Let's see what we're saying. Rowan, 93, 93, 93. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. Dharma says, I was just talking about Spare this morning, and I have the same birthday. Righteous synchronicity. Very good. People excited. 93. Okay. All right. Welcome, Caleb. First time catching it live. What's up, Brandon? What's up, Mortonland? What's up, Paul? What's up, Septimus? What's up, Matthew? What's up, Howard? What's up, Rowan? What's up, James? What's up, Vidar? What's up, Noel Nullington? All right. And yeah, someone says, my dog would have tried to eat the whole chicken in one bite. Yeah. All right. What's up, Quixotic Dragon? What's up, SB? What's up, Scott Burbank? What's up, Paul? Yeah. All right. Someone says, before the fall, nothing ate meat. Checkmate, Jason. Funny. All right. Moving forward. What's up, Kali? How's it going? Yeah, someone says, Kenneth Grant being the nexus for so much of later magic is very fitting. Yeah, Kenneth Grant did a phenomenal job of preserving earlier traditions. Crowley and Spare. His own contributions were kind of off the rails, but he's very entertaining, right? And the magical world, owes a great debt to him for preserving Spare's legacy at all, because Spare would have been completely forgotten if it wasn't for Grant. And so, and Grant also published Spare's writing. He made his own elaborations and weird versions of it, because Kenneth Grant really wanted to combine Crowley, Spare, and H.P. Lovecraft, and saw them all as transmitting from the same source, which is pretty spurious, but he did a great job there. What's up, CJ? Someone says, I found the ceremonial crowd to largely be fighting over who can be king of the dung pile. Yeah. And that whole thing is fostered by that whole thing of grades and hierarchy. And like, you go look at OTO forums and they're just fighting over who the real OTO is. It's like, guys, you've been doing this for decades. You settled this in court in the 80s, and you guys are still doing a paper chase over who had what lineage and whatever. It's just like, seriously, get a life. Do some magic for once. Why don't you go do some magic and see if it works or not, instead of fixating over if you have a piece of paper. Believe me, I've got all the pieces of paper. I've got all the lineages. I'm the closest link to Aleister Crowley in North America. But what does it matter? Nothing. It doesn't matter anything. It's something that inspires me, but what matters is what I can bring to the world, not that, right? Not what happened, not a connection to the past. So, yeah, Quixotic Dragon says, single them out. It's okay. They suck. Paul says, I practice ceremonial magic, but very rarely do so with other people. Yeah. Someone says, I've gotten results from ceremonial magic and like much of the classic stuff, but the move away from it is good. I think you should study all of it, frankly. There is lots of good stuff in Kabbalah and ceremonial magic. You just can't get stuck up in that whole, order paper chase. All right. R. Goldman 23 says, Allah is jihading against OBS. Yeah, Dharma Vajra says, I also don't understand why in popular history more Muslim raids and genocides are not mentioned, only the Christian ones. It's real simple, because people aren't scared of Christians. They're scared of Islam. So they don't criticize it. I think it is that simple. And you don't need me to tell you what the ultimate outcome of that attitude would be. What's up, Elizabeth? What's up, hey, it's Ryan. What's up, Caitlin? Yeah, someone says, there's also tons of other channels who call out Christians constantly. There's an entire cottage industry of atheist influencers and lefty commenters. Focusing on Islam is much needed. Okay, so let me lay this on you. You would imagine somebody like me, I wear the black hat. The average normie probably thinks I'm a Satanist. You would imagine somebody like me who has been actively in the public advocating for literal occultism for a quarter of a century now, would have constantly been getting pushback from Christians. Okay. You know how much pushback or attacks I've got from Christians in my entire life and my entire career? None. Zero. Nothing. Nothing. Not once. The closest could be, you could say, a Christian publishing company put out a book called Generation Hex, Understanding the Subtle Dangers of Wicca, after my first book, Generation Hex, came out. And that may have been to, have that on Amazon also when people search my book. Okay. That's their right. They can do that. They weren't attacking me. That's fine, right? I've never had an issue with Christians. I thought I would. I thought I would be subject to the Inquisition and all that. But you know who I have issues with? Marxists and Islamists. That's who's giving me shit. Marxists in their various guises. Actually, it's not even really Islamists, right? Because I don't hear from Muslims at all. I don't think they care, right? They're off on their own thing. They got enough problems to deal with, trying to conquer the world and all that. I only get shit from angry leftists. Go figure. I guess that's literally their only emotional response to everything. It's like they have a one color palette. And they're the ones that get angry and defend Islam because they now have common cause with Islam of destroying Western civilization. Okay. But you see, just go look how that went in Iran. The Marxists overthrew the Shah, and then they were all murdered immediately by the Ayatollah because they were now going to be a problem to the Islamic regime. So Marxists, forever the useful idiots of history, unfortunately. But yeah, I've never had issues with Christians. So why should I pick on them? Yes, we can call out Christian extremism, but honestly, I don't really see a whole lot of it. So, and people, it's this simple. People criticize Christianity because it's low-hanging fruit, because it's a group of people who will turn the other cheek and agree with you, which says volumes about their character. It really does. And if Christians want to debate me or put up, have a response to my ideas, great. Let's talk, right? Because they're not going to cut my head off. You know what I mean? They're not going to do a Salman Rushdie. So I particularly at this point in my career, I have a fairly extensive experience of world spirituality at this point, as much as an American from the suburbs can. And it's pretty clear to me where the lines are at this point. All right. Okay. Apologies for the echo. Zos says 72 versions, though. By the way, 72 versions. I had this. So check this out. I put on my Twitter, apparently when you look at the 72 versions thing in the Quran, actually here, I'll just pull it up because somebody quoted it. It sounds like they're describing gray aliens. I'm not even joking. So if you go to my Twitter, it's just my X, it's just at Jason Louv on X, where I consistently terrorize the planet. In a funny way, in a good way. Scrolling down here. Okay, so yeah. I'll put it up on the screen for you. Check this out. Whoops. Where'd it go? Oh, damn it. Don't leave. Oh, everything's freezing. God, fucking all is at it again. All right. Okay. So yes, this is actually a picture of an alien abduction. But yeah, this is a snap off 4chan, I guess. So in Islam, the 42 virgins you're promised, they're not normal women. There's something made specifically by Allah for believers called huri. This is how they're described. Large, wide, intensely black eyes with white irises, completely hairless except sometimes their heads, incredibly fair and pale skin. You can even make out their bones in bright light. Eternally young, with breasts just beginning to swell. Oh, Lord. So about 11 years old, because, yeah, Muslims are into that. Muhammad was into that. Maybe 4 foot 8-ish. And then the 4chaner responds, "My brother in Allah, for your martyrdom, he has given you 72 A's," meaning A-LMAOs, which is the autistic online way of saying gray aliens. But pretty hilarious, right? But here's another thing. Where else have we heard the number 72 from? The Goetic demons, the Shem HaMephorash, right? So it'd be hilarious if the 72 virgins are actually 72 aliens / Goetic demons. That would be funny. But yeah, there you go. A lot of people who work with Goetia think sometimes they show up as aliens. All right. Well, the more you know. Yeah. Darren Burr says the hostages are probably dead anyway. I don't quite know what you mean by that comment. I certainly hope not. I don't think they're all dead. Absolutely not. R. Goldman 23 says maybe we should invite Mitch back on to discuss this. That would be super cool. Yeah. Okay, gonna move ahead a little bit. Okay, yeah. So yeah, this is good. Someone says, I found that I did understand much of Spare when actually reading his work, but I didn't understand much of Spare when actually reading his work, but in moments of illumination sometime later. It is very effective if one buries it to return to it later. Yeah, I mean, Spare is writing, this is language as sigil, right? He's making up words. He's using language in a way that you can't fully understand it. It doesn't fully register to the conscious mind, but it embeds something in the unconscious. Right. And it's very sidereal, much like his art, where it's twisting and weird. And you kind of think you understand it, but it's skew ways. Fascinating. Did Nimoy dig the Rubenesque ladies? Yes, he made coffee table books about it. It was his thing. Oh, more super chats. Okay. Roaming around. Very funny name. Thank you. $50 from Ben. Damn, are you rolling in crypto money or something? Nice. Got a DNC government job. Thank you very much. $50. Very, very, very generous of you. Very kind. Thank you very much, Ben. Chicken snack funds for the Shiba assassins, where they're going to the cats, but much appreciated. Much appreciated. Thank you all. Super chatters. You were all very generous. Remember, please, everyone, also like and subscribe and consider becoming a member of the channel and supporting that way. You can see everyone who has... Oh, check it out. We actually have, looks like, if you look at Jacobus's super chat, you scroll up, you see Jacobus has a moon. That's because Jacobus has now been subscribed for several months, right? So if you're a subscriber of the channel, you move up the tree of life and get a new planetary icon further up the tree based on how long you've been a subscriber. So everyone hail Jacobus for making it to Yesod. Very, very cool. Very cool. Quixotic Dragon says the closest link to Crowley in North America. Correct. Crowley initiated Lawrence Miles, aka Sri Dadaji Mahendranath, who also became a member of the Nath Sampradaya, of which I am also a member of multiple branches of in India. He went to India and trained for 30 years under various teachers. Initiated. See, I shouldn't give her real name, but a woman who goes by the name Lalita Nath, right? Who's a hardcore tantric Nath, right? And studied in India with him for years. And they went around in the red robes and all that, walking sticks. I've worn Dadaji's sunglasses and held the walking cane he used to beat people to death with. It was a cool vibe, right? Because he's constantly getting attacked by robbers. Because, Naths walk around naked with nothing but a walking stick and a begging bowl. So people would constantly be trying to jack him and he would have to fight them. And Lalita Nath initiated me, which makes me 4 steps away from Crowley, which, as far as I know, the only person in North America who is that degree away from Crowley is Anna Kriya King, who was James Eshelman's initiator. I don't know if she's still alive or not. I think probably she is. If she is still alive, then we are both at the same generation by different lineages. Okay. But that's my AA lineage, right? And here I am. But does that mean anything? Ultimately, the only thing that means anything is my work and whether you get something out of it, right? I could talk about all the other initiations I have and we'd be here all day, and I can tell you all these crazy stories about studying in India or Sufism or Masonry or, all kinds, NLP, all kinds of stuff, right? All this stuff, you name it, I probably got it. But what does it matter? Nothing. It's paper. It's a paper chase. You're not going to catch me standing on other people's work, which ultimately is what lineage chasing is, standing on other people's work and other people's glory. I will either live or die by my own work. And if it fails, then it fails. And that's on me, right? But me alone. And if it succeeds, then that's on me, but me alone. Okay. That's my answer to that. Oh, yeah. Mortland says, was there any connection with Geisen and Crowley? So I'm also, in lineage to Brian Geisen and William Burroughs, because Geisen and Burroughs initiated Jen, who initiated me into that lineage. So again, you name it, I got it. And again, that's not to brag. It's just to show I am credentials. I do know my stuff, but it doesn't matter. What matters is the quality of my work. So if you want Geison's backstory, check out the book Nothing is True, Everything is Permitted by John Geiger, which I edited back in the mid-2000s. CJ says, oh, wow, yeah. CJ says, earlier comment about Gazans grooming children, which, by the way, you can see video on if you go back to this channel and look at the Memory TV clips. Earlier comment about Gazans grooming children reminded me of my Jordanian ex-situationship complaining about being taught to hate Jews in grade school as basically a part of the curriculum. Yeah, that's standard throughout the entire Muslim world. It really is. That's not a joke. You know, my college roommate grew up in Iran, and he told me, this is before 9/11, he told me that every morning they would have to say death to America, death to Israel, like we do the Pledge of Allegiance. That's not some crazy Fox News thing. That's actually real. Paul says, I took Minerval in the OTO, super cool. Don't know if I'll go further with it, but I definitely identify as a Thelemite. I did learn a great deal from the lodge I joined. Scott Stenwick is an awesome teacher. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty good way to interface with the OTO, because a Minerval, which is like not even first degree, it's like 0 degree. A Minerval is considered you're an honored guest of the order, and you can go and hang out, but you're not, nothing is required of you. And you know, it really is only past the 3rd degree that they start giving you administrative duties, which is, you know, unless you want to make your life the OTO, is not for everyone. Let's just put it that way. Those who can do that, who thrive in organizations, that's great, right? Some people very much thrive that way. But, you know, if you just want to learn from that tradition, going Minerval's a pretty good way to go. And Scott Stenwick, that's cool to know that Scott Stenwick is a cool teacher. Shebrew, did I hang out at a cafe called Vox Pop back in the day? No, I have never heard of it. Yeah, no one, someone says there are some anti-occult sentiments within Christianity. Well, I mean, that actually was a problem in the 80s in the Satanic Panic, right? But it is marginalized and very online, at least in the West. Yeah. 93, Jacobson. Team Yasad, what's up, Alex? You got to the moon, very cool. 72 main naughty, says Caitlin. Interesting. Oh, that's very interesting. And Paul says, so Spare's writing is something like what Grant Morrison refers to as a hyper sigil. Well, yeah, I think so. Yeah. Ah, now we're talking. I love it. Ad J says, have you seen the movie Four Lions? Yes, I love that movie. I love Chris Morris. Chris Morris is one of the great British satirists who's so out there that it just, people can't take him. But he did this great movie called Four Lions, and I think like 2009, which is the setup is basically, it's like Three Stooges, but with wannabe jihadis who are just from like middle-class families in England. It's hilarious. It is hilarious. You have to see that. It opens up with a guy doing like, but I can't give it away. There's a part with comedy jihad that is hilarious. I won't give it away. Everyone should see that. It is so funny. It is so funny. Yeah, thanks for throwing that out. Paul says, Lon Milo Duquette was initiated by Grady McMurtry, who was initiated by Crowley, but that's Lon. Oh, okay, all right. So there you go. Okay, so Lon is, so okay, there you go. And yeah, all deference to Lon, right? And if I'm wrong about that, that's fine, right? And it's like whether or whatever the, it's like, but even with Lon, right? It's like whatever the chain of initiation is, you know, Lon has been teaching magic like every day practically since 10 years before I was born. So who has seniority there? Lon by far, right? But that's from his work. Jacobson says, I can only speak of the OTO in Australia. Is that still run by, I believe, Frater Shiva? It's a very tightly run ship. Now 90% of the bad stories are from the US with unofficial lodges starting up and ending in abuse. Yeah. That's good to know about Australia. So I think you're referring to the Solar Lodge, which was a renegade OTO lodge in the 60s. However, somebody later got Phyllis Seckler on record saying that they were actually a licensed OTO lodge, if I remember correctly. So they kind of obfuscate that one. But there have also been horror stories from official lodges. For instance, I believe the Oregon Lodge, either Portland or I think it was the Eugene, Oregon OTO Lodge, admitted somebody from a prison ministry who turned out to be a serial killer and did a bunch of home invasions and also raped 2 sisters in the order. That's horrifying, right? And later he got taken to trial. I think he got the death penalty, and OTO people testified against him on the stand. Okay, so to their credit, they handled it. But that's they should have checked that out further. So that's true of any group, like keep your wits about you. Thank you, Jester. $20. Yes. Thank you so much. Your courses are phenomenal. Literally the best content I've been able to find. Thank you very much. Question, are inhibitory and excitatory states synonymous with parasympathetic and sympathetic? Oh, that's interesting. Quite possibly. Interesting. I'm going to think about that. If so, any tips for calming down / freaking out? Well, I mean, we could be here all day. Meditation. And for inhibitory, do meditation. For excitatory, go out to a rave, go dancing. That's a good way to do it. Okay, yeah, Frater Shiva still runs it. Okay. Four more super chats till we get to the cat mukbang. And I'm going to throw something, and then once we get to that, I'm going to throw in an even better one. But only if we get to that you're going to like a lot, that I just had an idea for. All right, let's get to Spare's masterpiece. Check out Spare's sigil. Spare didn't just do one sigil at a time. Check that out. He did like a bunch at once. He would do his own steles, which is awesome, right? And that drawing is automatic drawing, meaning he drew that with his eyes closed and just let his hand move with the pencil, similar to like a Ouija board. And then you've got the Egyptian Hadith up there. So cool. So cool. The only artist I can think of who is more or perhaps comparable to Spare's level of just pure occult, like, you get that feeling when you're like looking at grimoires and it's like ultra fucking arcane and you just have that like, The only artist I can think of that is comparable is Andrew Chumbly, who died at 40 of a heart attack, but some of you may remember him. He wrote the Azawisha Katub. He was a contributor to Chaos International. All right. The Book of Pleasure. So yes, this is his most famous work. This is the one where he most clearly lays out some of his magical theories. Let's get into it. So yes, let it hit you like a sigil. Don't worry if it doesn't make sense. Just kind of like close your eyes even, let it hit you, let it wash over you, let it take root and bear as a seed to bear fruit in the future. Okay. The work of art we love is that which, like the sentence of Meredith's Mrs. Mountstuart, has an outline in vagueness and is flung out to be apprehended, not dissected. Explanations, labels we rightly distrust. But after our first delight, it is interesting to examine the aims and methods of the artist and to appreciate the thoughts behind them. With this, this is the introduction. Okay, let's skip that. I apologize. All right, he begins with a list. Exploration Arcane. I'm coming in strong again. You must have now gifted like 20 memberships at this point. This is amazing. Thank you very much. We got 5 new members. Congratulations, everyone. Okay. All right, he starts this off with definitions, which is great. He defines his terms. The words God, religions, faith, morals, woman, etc., they being forms of belief, are used as expressing different means as controlling and expressing desire. An idea of unity by fear in some form or another, which must spell bondage. The imagined limits extended by science, which adds a dearly paid inch to our height. No more. Kia. That doesn't mean the South Korean car, although it's spelled the same. Oddly enough. This concept was taken by Chaos Magic. Kia. The absolute freedom which being free is mighty enough to be reality and free at any time, therefore is not potential or manifest, except as its instant possibility, by ideas of freedom or means, but by the ego being free to receive it, by being free of ideas about it, and by not believing. The less said of it, Kia, the less obscure it is. Remember, evolution teaches by terrible punishments. That conception is ultimate reality, but not ultimate freedom from evolution. Virtue, pure art. Vice, fear, belief, faith, control, science, and the like. Self-love, A mental state, mood, or condition caused by the emotion of laughter, becoming the principle that allows the ego appreciation or universal association in permitting inclusion before conception. Exhaustion. That state of vacuity brought by exhausting a desire by some means of dissipation when the mood corresponds to the nature of the desire, i.e., when the mind is worried because of the non-fulfillment of such desire and seeks relief. By seizing this mood and living, the resultant vacuity is sensitive to the subtle suggestion of the sigil. Charlie needs out. There you go. Yes, I literally had to shampoo every carpet in my house after feeding Charlie and Rishi that chicken. I'll let you figure out why. All right, here's one of Spare's most famous images. I believe this was 1913 he wrote this. Yeah, that's him demonstrating the death posture. Amazing. One of a kind. All right. The title of this section is basically, this story is basically summarizes my entire life. This is great. This summarizes my entire life and work. Different religions and doctrines as means to pleasure, freedom, and power. Different religions and doctrines as means to pleasure, freedom, and power. Or, as I put it, a Scarlet Imprint in our podcast, it's like, it's like looking at different religions as different drugs. It's like, let me get a line of that. Let me get a line of that. Let me get a line of that. All right. What is there to believe but in self? And self is the negation of completeness as reality. No man has seen self at any time. We are what we believe and what it implies by a process of time in the conception. Creation is caused by this bondage to formula. Actions are the expressions of ideas bound up in the belief. They, being inherent, are obscure, their operation indirect. Easily they deceive introspection. Fruits of action are twofold, heaven or hell, their unity or nothingness, purgatory or indifference. In heaven there is desire for women, hell, the desire intense. Purgatory is expectation delayed, indifference but disappointment till recovery. Then verily they are one and the same. The wise pleasure seeker, having realized they are different degrees of desire and never desirable, gives up both virtue and vice and becomes a Kiaist. Riding the shark of his desire, he crosses the ocean of the dual principle and engages himself in self-love. Religions are the projection of incapacity, the imaginations of fear, the veneer of superstition, that paradox is truth, that God is always in heaven, or that the almighty inconceivable emanates its conception or negation, commits suicide, etc., while ofttimes the ornamentation of imbecility. As a virtue in the idea to maximize pleasure cheaply, remit your sins and excuse them, is but ceremonial, the expression of puppetry to the governing fear. Yes, what you have ordained in your religiousness is your very rack, imagined though it be. The prospect is not pleasant. You have taught yourself. It has become inborn and your body is sensitive. Some praise the idea of faith. To believe that they are gods or anything else would make them such, proving by all they do to be full of its non-belief. Better is it to admit incapacity or insignificance than reinforce it by faith, since the superficial protects but does not change the vital. Therefore reject the former for the latter. Their formula is deception, and they are deceived, the negation of their purpose. Faith is denial, or the metaphor of idiocy. Hence it always fails. To make their bondage more secure, governments force religion down the throats of their slaves, and it always succeeds. Those who escape it are but few. Therefore, their honor is the greater. Check out on YouTube Bosch Fawstin. The cartoonist Bosch Fawstin, B-O-S-C-H. He's an Albanian ex-Muslim, was raised Muslim. I think he's a real hero. When faith perishes, The self shall come into its own. Others less foolish obscure the memory that God is a conception of themselves and as much subject to law. Then, this ambition of faith, is it so very desirable? Myself, I have not yet seen a man who is not God already. That's one of Spare's most famous lines. Myself, I have not yet seen a man who is not God already. Others again, and those who have much knowledge, cannot tell you exactly what belief is, or how to believe in what defies natural laws and existing belief. Surely it is not by saying, I believe. That art has long been lost. They are even more subject to bewilderment and distraction directly they open their mouths full of agreement. They are even more subject to bewilderment and distraction directly they open their mouths full of argument, without power and unhappy unless spreading their own confusion. To gain cogency, they must adopt dogma and mannerism that excludes possibility. By the illumination of their knowledge, they deteriorate in accomplishment. Have we not watched them decay in ratio to their expoundings? Verily, man cannot believe by faith or gain, neither can he explain his knowledge unless born of a new law. We being everything, wherefore the necessity of imagining we are not. Be ye mystic. Others believe in prayer. Have not all yet learnt that to ask is to be denied? Let it be the root of your gospel. O ye who are living other people's lives. Unless desire is subconscious, it is not fulfilled. No, not in this life. Thus verily sleep is better than prayer. Quiescence is hidden desire, a form of not asking. By it the female obtains much from man. Utilize prayer, if you must pray, as a means of exhaustion, and by that you will obtain your desire. Some do much to show the similarity of different religions. Certainly by it I prove the possibility of a fundamental illusion. I love that. Let me read that again. Some do much to show the similarity of different religions. Certainly by it I prove the possibility of a fundamental illusion. But that they never realize. Of this ukaze, they are the mockery, for how much they regret. They suffer more conflict than the unenlightened. With what they can identify their own delusion or fear, they call truth. They never see this similarity and the quintessence of religions, their own poverty of imagination, and religion's palliation. Better is it to show the essential difference of religions. It is as well to know the various means. Is not their object to deceive and govern? Surely then, for the attainment of the transcendental, God and religion should have no place. Some praise truth, so-called, but give it many containers. Forgetting its dependence, they prove its relationship and paradox, the song of experience and illusion. Paradox is not truth, but the truth that anything can be true for a time. What supersedes paradox, and it's implicit, not necessary. I will make the foundation of my teaching. To read that again. What supersedes paradox, and it's implicit, not necessary, I will make the foundation of my teaching. What supersedes paradox? This is a post-abyssal comment. He says in one line there what Crowley takes the entire Book of Lies to say. For those who have ears to hear. Let us determine the deliberative. The truth cannot be divided. Self-love only cannot be denied, and is self-love as such when paradoxical, under any condition. Hence, it alone is truth, without accessories complete. Here we go. My favorite line in Spare ever. My favorite part. Others praise ceremonial magic and are supposed to suffer much ecstasy. Others praise ceremonial magic and are supposed to suffer much ecstasy. Our asylums are crowded. The stage is overrun. Is it by symbolizing we become the symbolized? Were I to crown myself king, should I be king? Rather should I be an object of disgust or pity. These magicians, whose insincerity is their safety, are but the unemployed dandies of the brothels. Absolutely. These magicians, and this central part is critical, whose insincerity is their safety, meaning they don't know the first goddamn thing about magic. These magicians, whose insincerity is their safety, are but the unemployed dandies of the brothels. Magic is but one's natural ability to attract without asking. Ceremony, what is unaffected. Its doctrine, the negation of theirs. I know them well and their creative learning that teaches the fear of their own light. Vampires, they are as the very lice in attraction. Mom's Basement Marco. Their practices prove their incapacity. They have no magic to intensify the normal, the joy of a child, or a healthy person, none to evoke their pleasure or wisdom from themselves. Their methods depending on a morass of the imagination and a chaos of conditions. Their knowledge obtained with less decency than the hyena his food. I say they are less free and do not obtain the satisfaction of the meanest among animals. Self-condemned in their disgusting fatness, Mom's Basement Marco, their emptiness of power, without even the magic of personal charm or beauty. They are offensive in their bad taste and mongering for advertisement. The freedom of energy is not obtained by its bondage, great power not by disintegration. It is not because our energy, or mind stuff, is already overbound and divided that we are not capable, let alone magical. Some believe any and everything is symbolic and can be transcribed and explain the occult, but of what they do not know, great spiritual truths, so argument a metaphor, cautiously confusing the obvious which develops the hidden virtue. This unnecessary corpulency, however impressive, is it not disgusting? The elephant is exceeding large, but extremely powerful. The swine, though odious, does not breed the contempt of our good taste. If a man is no hero to his servant, much less can he remain a mystic in the eyes of the curious. Similarity educates mimicry. Decorate your meaning, however objectionable, as fact, after you have shown your honesty. Truth, though simple, never needs the argument of confusion for obscurity. Its own pure symbolism embraces all possibilities as mystic design. Take your stand in common sense, and you include the truth which cannot lie. No argument has yet prevailed. Perfect proportion suggests no alteration, and what is useless decays. They reject all the modern symbolism, all means of locomotion, machinery, governments, institutions, and everything essentially modern is vital symbolism of the workings of our mind. They reject all the modern symbolism and reach an absurd limit very early. Not counting on change. The symbol of justice known to the Romans is not symbolic of divine or our justice, at least not necessarily or usually. The vitality is not exactly like water, nor are we trees, more like ourselves, which might incidentally include trees somewhere unlearnt, much more obvious in our workings at present. Not counting on change and at times the arbitrary nature of symbolism or the chance of a preserved folly by their adoption of the traditional without a science, as having reading to the present, their symbolism is chaotic and meaningless. Not knowing the early rendering, they succeed in projecting their own meagerness by this confusion, as explaining the ancient symbols. Children are more wise. This conglomeration of antiquity delayed, collected with the disease of greed, is surely the chance for charity? Forgetting trumpery ideas, learn the best tradition by seeing your own functions and the modern unbiased. Some praise the belief in a moral doctrinal code, which they naturally and continually transgress and never obtain their purpose. Given the right nature, they succeed fairly in their own governing and are those most healthy, sane, and self-pleased. It may be called the negation of my doctrine. They obtain tolerable satisfaction, whereas mine is complete. Let him tarry here, who is not strong for the great work. In freedom he might be lost. So fledge your wings fearlessly, ye humble ones. Others say knowledge only is eternal. It is the eternal illusion of learning. the ukase of learning, what we already know. Plato agreed with this. The Greek word for this was anamnesis. Directly we ask ourselves how we induce stupidity. Without this conception, what is there we could not know and accomplish? Others for concentration, it will not free you. The mind conceiving the law is bondage. Arrived at that, you will want deconcentration. Dissociation from all ideas but one is not release but imaginative fulfillment, or the fury of creation. Others again, that all things are emanations of the divine spirit, as rays from the sun, hence the need of emancipation. Verily, things are of necessity through their conception and belief. Then let us destroy or change conception and empty the belief. These and many other doctrines are declared by me as the perpetuators of sin and illusion, each and all depending on a muddled implication, obscuring yet evolved from the duality of the consciousness for their enjoyment. Cheers, Caleb. Caleb says, the Marco references keep making me laugh, so I have to tip. Cheers. I appreciate that. Thank you. And Frauder coming in strong again with 5 memberships. You guys are like Frauder RC and Exploration Arcanum have just been tossing out memberships. It's amazing. You get a membership, you get a membership, you membership. Thank you, both of you guys. Very, very kind of you. These and many other doctrines are declared by me as the perpetuators of sin and illusion, each and all depending on a muddled implication, obscuring yet evolved from the duality of the consciousness for their enjoyment. In fear, they would vomit hot blood were they to see the fruits of their actions and pleasures. Thus, believing in widely different doctrines, they are of that dual principle, necessary parasites on each other. Cheers, Josh. $10. Coming in strong. Thank you very much. Thus, believing in widely different doctrines, they are of that dual principle, necessary parasites on each other. Like drugs and the surgeon's knife, they only annul, or at best remove, in effect. They do not change or remove the fundamental cause, the law. O God, thou art the stagnant environment. All is quackery. These religions whose very existence depend on their failure. Oh, man. Yeah, think about that. It can sometimes be similar with bad therapists, not good therapists, but bad therapists. All is quackery. These religions whose very existence depend on their failure are so full of misery and confusion, have only multiplied arguments, as full of argument as they are evil, so crowded with non-essentials, being so barren of any free pleasure in this life or another, I cannot uphold their doctrines. Their criterion for enjoyment, death. Better it were a man renounce them all and embrace his own invincible purpose. Again, he says right there in one line what Crowley took several books to say, kind of, and never fully articulated. Better it were a man renounce them all and embrace his own invincible purpose. He cannot go further, and this is his only release. By it he may put his pleasure where he will and find satisfaction. So again, we have a cool drawing of another one of his sigil blocks for stealing the fire from heaven. Another automatic drawing. This is to demonstrate the death posture. All right. And again, we have another classic Spare image. The ascension of the ego from ecstasy to ecstasy. One of the most shamanic images ever made. By the way, one thing we've never gotten is a coffee table book of all of Spare's art, or at least quite a lot of it. We've never had a collection of Spare's art in book form. We need that. The occult world needs that, because nobody can understand Spare fully without looking at his art, and it's not commonly available. So I don't know, like literally like Scarlet Imprint, Fulgur, somebody, that would be a phenomenal project. I mean, that would be a classic and a hell of a seller. Spare coffee table book. I've been saying that for like 15 years, 20 years. We need that. Maybe someone listening can take that idea and make a bunch of money off it. The consumer of religion, Kia in its transcendental and conceivable manifestation. Of fame it has no need to designate, I call it Kia. I dare not claim it as myself. The Kia which can be expressed by conceivable ideas is not the eternal Kia, which burns up all belief, but is the archetype of self, the slavery of mortality. Endeavoring to describe it, I write what may be, but not usually called the Book of Lies. About this self, all conception is the dual principle, the law which is its condition. The unorthodox of the originable, a volant sight that conveys somehow by the incidental that truth is somewhere. The Kia which can be vaguely expressed in words is the neither. The unmodified I and the sensation of omnipresence, the illumination symbolically transcribed in the sacred alphabet, and of which I am about to write. Its emanation is its own intensity, but not necessariness. It has and ever will exist. The virgin quantum, by its exuberance we have gained existence. Who dare say where, why, and how it is related? By the labor of time, the doubter inhabits his limit. Not related to, but permitting all things, it eludes conception, yet is the quintessence of conception as permeating pleasure in meaning, anterior to heaven and earth, in its aspect that transcends these, but not intelligence. It may be regarded as the primordial sexual principle, the idea of pleasure in self-love. Only he who has attained the death posture can apprehend this new sexuality, and its almighty love satisfied. He that is ever servile to belief, clogged by desire, is identified with such and can see but its infinite ramifications in dissatisfaction. The unmodified sex principle, refracted through the dual principle, emanates the infinite variety of emotions or sexualities, which may be called its ramifications. The progenitor of itself and all things, but resembling nothing, this sexuality in its early simplicity embodies the everlasting. Time has not changed it, hence I call it new. This ancestral sex principle and the idea of self are one and the same. This sameness, its exaction and infinite possibilities, the early duality, the mystery of mysteries, the sphinx at the gates of all spirituality. All conceivable ideas begin and end as light in its emotion. The ecstasy which the creation of the idea of self induces. The idea is unity by the formula of self, its necessary reality as continuity, the question of all things. All this universe visible and invisible has come out of it. As unity conceived duality, it begot trinity, begot tetragrammaton. Duality being unity is time, the complex of conception, the eternal refluctation to the primeval reality in freedom, being trinity of dualities, is the six senses, the five facets of sex, projecting as environment for self-assimilation and denial as a complete sexuality. Being tetragrammaton of dualities is 12-fold by arrangement, the human complex, and may be called the 12 commandments of the believer. It imagines the eternal decimal, its multiplicity embracing eternity, from which spring the manifold forms which constitute existence. Vitalized by the breath of self-love, life is conscious of one. Self being its opposing force is alternately conflict, harmony, life, and death. These four principles are one and the same. The conception considered as the complete self, or consciousness, hence they may be blended into unity and symbolized. One form made by two, that is threefold and having four directions. The transcendental law, the law and testament of the new. The law of Kia is its own arbiter, beyond necessitation. Who can grasp the nameless Kia? Obvious but unintelligible, without form, its design most excellent. Its wish is its superabundance. Who can assert its mysterious purpose? By our knowledge it becomes more obscure, more remote, and our faith opacity. Without attribute I know not its name. How free it is, it has no need of sovereignty. Kingdoms are their own despoilers. Without lineage, who dare claim relationship? Without virtue, how pleasing in its moral self-love. How mighty is it in its assertion of need not be, does not matter. Self-love in complete perspective serves its own invincible purpose of ecstasy. Supreme bliss simulating opposition is its balance. It suffers no hurt, neither does it labor. Is it not self-attracting and independent? Assuredly, we cannot call it balance. Could we but imitate its law, all creation without command would unite and serve our purpose in pleasure and harmony. By the way, this is one of the things about sometimes picking up old occult books from way back. This has my bloodstains in it, and I have no idea why. For some reason, my bloodstains are on this. No idea. But that's how it goes. Kia transcending conception is unchanging and inexhaustible. There is no need of illumination to see it. If we open our mouths to speak of it, it is not of it, but of our duality, mighty though it be in its early simplicity. Kia, without conceiving, produces its rendezvous at the fullness of creation. Without assertion, the mightiest energy. Without smallness, it may appear the least among things. Its possession, ours without asking. Its being free, the only thing that is free. Without distinction, it has no favorites, but nourishes itself. In fear, all creation pays homage, but does not extol its moral, so everything perishes unbeautifully. We endow ourselves with the power we conceive of it, and it acts as master. By scores of incarnations, our eventual self is derived from the attributes with which we endow our God, the abstract ego, or conceptive principle. All conception is a denial of the Kia, hence we are its opposition, our own evil. The offspring of ourselves, we are the conflict of what we deny and assert of the Kia. It would seem as though we cannot be too careful in our choice, for it determines the body we inhabit. We endow ourselves with the power we conceive of it, and it acts as master, never the cause of emancipation. Thus forever from self do I fashion the Kia without likeness, but which may be regarded as the truth. From this consultation is the bondage made, not by intelligence shall we be free. The law of Kia is its ever original purpose, undetermined, without change the emanations, though through our conception they materialize and are of that duality. Man takes his law from this refraction, his ideas, reality. With what does he balance his ecstasy? Measure for measure by intense pains, sorrow, and miseries. With what his rebellion? Of necessity slavery. Duality is the law. Realization by suffering relates and opposes by units of time. Ecstasy, for any length of time, is difficult to obtain and labored heavily for. Various degrees of misery, alternating with gusts of pleasure and emotions less anxious, would seem the condition of consciousness and existence. It is the illusion of time, size, entity, etc., the world's limit. The dual principle is the quintessence of all experience. No ramification has enlarged its early simplicity, but is only its repetition, modification, or complexity. Never is its evolution complete. It cannot go further than the experience of self, so returns and unites again and again, ever an anticlimax. Forever retrogressing to its original simplicity by infinite complication is its evolution. No man shall understand why by its workings. Know it as the illusion that embraces the learning of all existence. The most aged one who grows no wiser, it may be regarded as the mother of all things. Therefore, believe all experience to be illusion and the law of duality. As space pervades an object both in and out, similarly, within and beyond this ever-changing cosmos, there is this secondless principle. Soliloquy on Godhead. Who ever thought thus? Something is causing pain and something energizes the agony. May it not be caused through the latent idea of supreme bliss. And this eternal expectation, this amassing of ornament on decay, this ever-abiding thought, is coincidental with a vanity preceding death? O squalid thought, from the most morbid spleen, how can I devour thee and save my soul? Ever did it answer back, pay homage where due, the physician is the lord of existence. This superstition of medicine, is it not the essence of cowardice, the agent of death? Strange, no one remembers being dead. Have you ever seen the sun? If you have, then you have seen nothing dead, in spite of your different belief. Which is the more dead you, or this corpse? Which of you has the greater degree of consciousness? Judging by expression alone, which of you appears enjoying life most? May not this belief in death be the will that attempts death for your satisfaction, but can give you no more than sleep, decay, change, hell? This constant somnambulism is the unsatisfactory. You disbelieve in ghosts and God because you have not seen them? What? You have never seen the mocking ghosts of your beliefs? The laughing bedlam of your humility or mammon? Your grotesque ideas of self? Yea, your very faculties and your most courageous lies are gods. Who is the slayer of your gods but a god? There is no proof that you existed before? What an excuse! No one has returned to tell us? What a damning advocate! You are but what you were, somehow changed? You are the case prima facie that you are reincarnated to perhaps anything? Perhapses are possible. Can you do differently to what you do? Never shall I tire of asserting that you constantly do differently. What is the ugliness that offends? Is it the vague knowledge that you will have to change your mind? That you are germinating what you contain? You are always remembering what you forget. You are always remembering what you forgot. Today may be the day of reckoning, of believing by force what you disbelieved. Now, if today is yesterday in all but appearances, then tomorrow also is today, the day of decay. Daily is this universe destroyed. That is why you are conscious. There's no life or death. Such ideas could be less than comic. There is no duality. You are conscious of the gay butterfly you observe and are conscious of being you. The butterfly is conscious of being itself, and as such, it is a consciousness as good as and the same as yours, i.e. of your being you. Therefore, this consciousness of you that you both feel is the same you? Ergo, you are one and the same. The mystery of mysteries and the most simple thing in the world to understand. How could you be conscious of what you are not? But you might believe differently? So if you hurt the butterfly, you hurt yourself, but your belief that you don't hurt yourself protects you from hurt for a time. Belief gets tired, and you are miserably hurt. Do what you will. Belief is ever its own inconsistency. Desire contains everything. Hence, you must believe in everything if you believe at all. Belief seems to exclude common sense. Beautiful. There's no doubt about it. The consciousness of thee and me is the unwelcome but ever-ready torturer, yet it need not be so in any sense. Is it not a matter of fear? You are fearsome of entering a den of tigers? And I assure you it is a matter of righteousness, inborn or cultured, whether you enter voluntarily or are chucked in, and whether you come out alive or not. Yet daily you fearlessly enter dens inhabited by more terrible creatures than tigers, and you come out unharmed. Why? The allegory. Great scientists are finding out the death-dealing properties of the microbes they discover we breathe, and which according to their canon should destroy. We should be already dead. Have faith. The canons of science are quite correct. They do not disappoint the doubt. Our greater familiarity, this impulse to knowledge, will certainly bring us the disease and death they give, and also give us in compensation their powers of destruction. For the destruction of whom? Things will be squared. Is this the value of the will? This will to power, how life-preserving, how furthering of discriminate selection, how pleasing. Most noble explorers, you scientists, go on discovering the bottomless pit. When you are sodden with science, the lightning will thunder out the murder, new hope will be born, new creatures for the circus. The conception of Godhead must ever evolve its inertia for transmutation to its very opposite, because it contains it. The master must be the painful learner of his stupidity. The idea of God ever means the forgetfulness of supremacy and godliness. So must be supplanted by fear, eh? There is no atheist. No one is free from autobiography. There is no fearless pleasurist. The conception is the absence of its indisputable reality or reality within. When the conception is memorial to forgetfulness, it may be the chance of its reality for you. When the prayer, you are always praying, has transmutated to its blasphemy, you are attractive enough to be heard. Your desire is gratified. What a somersault of humility. Whether God is projected as master by fear or as the dweller within by love gods, we are all the time. That is why divinity is always potential. Its constant generation, the eternal delay, is life. This envy of the master or creator, the ultimate hope to follow in manner, is also existence and the forfeiture of life. There is no scientific fact. It ever implies its opposite as equal fact. This is the fact. Then why trouble to prove anything is fact? This vain hope to prove finality is death itself. So why humbug the desire? You have proved, by mathematics, the sun to be so many millions of miles away from you. You will now improve its efficiency. Nature, that impulse to the antithesis of your truths, will early prove, by mathematics and whenever you like, that the sun does not exist at all. Or if you wish, it will prove conclusively that the sun is millions of miles further away or millions of miles nearer than you once thought. Most extraordinary thinker, these facts and many others are already known to the butterfly, the lice, the insects, and perhaps yourself? Whose senses are the more true, yours or the houseflies? You will eventually adopt their vision, their thoughts and wisdom. You were such once. You are such now, but have not awakened them. You will be such again in power. Wondrous progress, most meritorious accomplishments, most merciless. Progress should be closely examined, and what you have gained by the convenience of science. A thought for perspective. You are always what you most wish, the prospective. Your desire is to live according to your desire, and this you are always realizing. Most noble sentiment. You are it already, the satisfied, the desireless, the real thing. You are drunk with it. There is no illusion but consciousness. This consciousness is ever the smiling monument commemorating whether you ever really enjoyed life. The God of the will is the command to obey. Its justice everyone fears. It is a sword, your desert for obedience. Will is the command to believe. Your will is what you have believed, actively willing belief for you. You think when it wishes. Will is complication, the means of a means. Call this will free or not. Beyond will and belief is self-love. I know no better name. It is free to believe what it desires. You are free to believe in nothing related to belief. The truth is not difficult to understand. The truth has no will. Will has no truth. Truth is will never believed. It has no truth. Could be is the immediate certainty. This haunting sphinx teaches us the value of the will to anything. Then there is no graver risk than absolute knowledge. If little is dangerous, what about omniscience? The almighty power has no accessories. Science is the accursed doubt of the possible, yea, of what does exist. You cannot conceive an impossibility. Nothing is impossible. You are the impossible. Doubt is delay, time, but how it punishes. Nothing is more true than anything else. What are you not? You ever answered truthfully. You tyrannize over yourself, so constantly forget what you remember. You resist sense objects and show resistance to the faculties by believing or not. These faculties are as numerous as the atoms you have not yet seen, and they are as endless as the number one. They come into life at will. You adopt a few at a time. Knowledge you speak through them. Did you but understand your grammar, those you disown speak louder than your words. I would not believe the wisdom of the Almighty. I would not believe the wisdom of the Almighty. Belief is ever its own tempter. To believe differently. You cannot believe freedom, but you may be freed from belief. Neither can you believe the truth, but you need not compromise yourself. The way of life is not by means. These doctrines, my doctrines, even though they allow the self-appointed devotee to emulate my realization, may I ever blush. The man of sorrows is the teacher. I have taught. Would I teach myself or thee again? Not for a gift from heaven. Mastership equals learning, equals constant unlearning. Almighty is he who has not learnt, and mighty is the babe. It has only the power of assimilating. The most syllogistical of fools now asks, how can we escape the inevitable evolutions of conception, as all is ever conceiving? My answer shall permit all means, all men, all conditions. Listen, O God, that art, yet would be God. When the mind is nonplussed, capability to attempt the impossible becomes known. By that most simple state of neither, the ego becomes the silent watcher and knows about it all. The why and how of desire is contained within the mystic state of neither, and common sense proves it is the milk state, most nutritious. Clownish that I am, yet all my ideas have come out of it, and, my friend, all yours. But ever have I been a sluggard, an old sinner who would see others almighty before himself. More Spare awesomeness. The death posture. Just beautiful. You got the Egyptian god Set in there, Vesca Pisces, Zos Kia, automatic writing, sigils, hadith, great stuff. Yeah, you never see chaos magicians doing that. I mean, come on. Get some art chops. The death posture. Ideas of self in conflict cannot be slain. By resistance, they are a reality. No death or cunning has overcome them, but is their reinforcement of energy. The dead are born again, and again lie in the womb of conscience. By allowing maturity is to predicate decay, when by non-resistance is retrogression to early simplicity and the passage to the original and unity without the idea. From that idea is the formula of non-resistance germinating. Does not matter. Please yourself. The conception of I am not must of necessity follow the conception of I am, because of its grammar, as surely in this world of sorrow, night follows day. The recognition of pain as such implies the idea of pleasure, and so with all ideas. By this duality, let him remember to laugh at all times, recognize all things, resist nothing. Then there is no conflict, incompatibility, or compulsion as such. By the way, I think Spare was in his early 20s when he wrote this, which is phenomenal. He's definitely an alien. He's a completely unique thinker. Transgressing conception by a lucid symbolism. Man implies woman. I transcend these by the hermaphrodite. This again implies a eunuch. Sexless. All these conditions I transcend by a neither principle. Yet although a neither is vague, the fact of conceiving it proves its palpability, and again implies a different neither. They being dual have analogy to certain early sex principles in nature. They are carried further in the sacred alphabet, being too abstruse to explain by orthodox words and grammar. But the neither principle of those two is the state where the mind has passed beyond conception. It cannot be balanced, since it implies only itself. The I principle has reached the does not matter, need not be state, and is not related to form. Save and beyond it, there is no other. Therefore, it alone is complete and eternal. Indestructible, it has power to destroy. Therefore, it alone is true freedom and existence. Through it comes immunity from all sorrow. Therefore, the spirit of ecstasy. Renouncing everything by the means shown, take shelter in it. Surely it is the abode of the Kia. This having once been, even symbolically reached, is our unconditional release from duality and time. Believe this to be true. The belief free from all ideas but pleasure. The karma through law, displeasure, speedily exhausts itself. In that moment beyond time, a new law can become incarnate, without the payment of sorrow, every wish gratified, he, the ego, having become the gratifier by his law. The new law shall be the arcana of the mystic unbalanced, does not matter, need not be. There is no necessitation. Please yourself is its creed. The belief ever striving for denial, fullness by multiplication, is kept free by retention in this. In that day there can be deliberation. Without subjection, what you wish to believe can be true. He, the ego, now becomes the absolute, is pleased by this imitation, the truth revealed to me by all systems of government, but is himself ungoverned. Kia, the supreme bliss. This, the glorious science of pleasing oneself by a new agreement, the art of self-love by recognition, the psychology of ecstasy by non-resistance. The ritual and doctrine. This might be the closest Spare comes to actual magical instruction. One of the points. Lying on your back lazily, the body expressing the emotion of yawning, suspiring while conceiving by smiling. That is the idea of the posture. Forgetting time with those things which were essential, reflecting their meaninglessness, the moment is beyond time, and its virtue has happened. Standing on tiptoe, with the arms rigid, bound behind by the hands, clasped and straining the utmost, the neck stretched, breathing deeply and spasmodically till giddy and sensation comes in gusts, gives exhaustion and capacity for the former. Gazing at your reflection till it is blurred, and you know not the gazer. Close your eyes. This usually happens involuntarily, and visualize. The light, always an X in curious evolutions, that is seen should be held on to, never letting go, till the effort is forgotten. This gives a feeling of immensity, whose limit you cannot reach. This should be practiced before experiencing the foregoing. The emotion that is felt is the knowledge which tells you why. By the way, I'm starting to run out of energy, so we got 2 more super chats. Got two more super chat slots. The death posture is an inevitability accelerated. Through it we escape our unending delay. By its attachment, the ego is swept up as a leaf in a fierce gale. In the fleetness of the indeterminable, that which is always about to happen becomes its truth. Things that are self-evident are no longer obscure, as by his own will he pleases. Know this as the negation of all faith by living it, the end of the duality of the consciousness. Of belief, a positive death state, all else as sleep, a negative state. It is the dead body of all we believe, and shall awake a dead corpse. The ego, in subjection to law, seeks inertia in sleep and death. Know the death posture and its reality in annihilation of law, the ascension from duality. In that day, the tearless lamentation, the universe shall be reduced to ashes. But he escapes the judgment. And what of I, most unfortunate man? In that freedom there is no necessitation. What dare I say more? Rather would I commit much sin than compromise myself. There are many preliminary exercises, as innumerable as sins, futile of themselves, but designative of the ultimate means. The death posture, in the reduction of all conception, sin to the neither till the desire is contentment by pleasing yourself. By this and by no other are the inertia of belief, the restoration of the new sexuality, and the ever-original self-love in freedom are attained. The primordial vacuity, or belief, is not by the exercise of focusing the mind on a negation of all conceivable things. The identity of unity and duality, chaos and uniformity, etc., etc., but by doing it now, not eventually. Perceive and feel without the necessity of an opposite, but by its relative. Perceive light without shadow by its own color as contrast, through evoking the emotion of laughter at the time of ecstasy in union, and by practice till that emotion is untiring and subtle. The law of reaction is defeated by inclusion. Were he to enjoy 100 pleasures at a time, however much his ecstasy, he does not lose, but great increase takes place. Let him practice it daily, accordingly, till he arrives at the center of desire. He has imitated the great purpose. Like this, all emotion should find equipoise at the time of emanation, till they become one. Thus, by hindering belief and semen from conception, they become simple and cosmic. By its illumination, there is nothing that cannot be explained. Certainly I find satisfaction in ecstasy. I have now told you a secret of great import. It was known to me in childhood. Even by sedulously striving for a vacuity of belief, one is cosmic enough to dwell in the innermost of others and enjoy them. Among men, few know what they really believe or desire. Let him begin, who would know, by locating his belief till he sees his will. Existing as dual, they are identical in desire. By their duality, there is no control, for will and belief are ever at variance, and each would shape the other to its ends. In the issue, neither wins, as the joy is a covert of sorrow. Let him unite them. Projection. More automatic drawing and sigils. Okay. We've been going for an hour and a half now. So we will probably have to pick this up next Sunday. But I hope you are enjoying it. I'm going to check comments. There's not many, and you have only a few minutes to get your last 2 super chats in before I get off. Or there will be sadly, no cat mukbang, despite the large amounts of money donated by people. So get them in. Or we'll have to reset next time. Okay. Exploration Arcanum says, I thought you heard him mention a book called Nothing is True, Everything is Permitted. Who's that? Was that by? So that is the best biography, or the only biography, I think, of Brian Geisen. That was written by John Geiger and edited and partially laid out and designed by me when I was working at Disinfo, which is probably my proudest project there, other than my own. Jacobson says, I think Spare's material is misinterpreted so often, and his writings are difficult to penetrate. It's hard to come to an understanding when the material is meant to be felt. Just my opinion. Yeah. Thank you again for the super chats. Yeah, Frauder, we got our Oprah God forms on today. Awesome. So Aria Freeman says, I've been researching Spare, and a Spare art book is necessary. Definitely. Pinterest is, okay, interesting. Pinterest is currently the easiest place to find his work, but it's even hard to know how much there is. Yeah, by the way, I've had some bizarre experiences with Spare in my life, and I've seen I would probably say like 70 or 80 Spare paintings in person, and the ones I saw have never been reproduced. So online, I've never seen them online. So there's a lot there. There's a lot that hasn't been seen. You know, I've seen Spare paintings with cliphotic sigils that Kenneth Grant from Liber Arcanorum, Liber 231, right? Those aren't available online. That's pretty phenomenal. We got another super chat. Thank you. Jacobus, cheers. Just one more needed. Dharma Vajra says, the wisdom of the liminal really goes off. Yeah. Alex's Psychic Bible has blood on it. Uh-oh. Chad Stack says, Spare, the OG jerking off for magical purposes, man. Well, yeah, I mean, so that whole that whole interpretation of sigils is really like the bottom barrel interpretation of Spare. I don't think anyone, I will say this, as legendary as Spare is, and as much as the English occult scene loves like dick writing him, I don't think anyone has ever fully understood Spare. I don't think Grant understood him. I think that probably the closest is there was a small pamphlet. I haven't actually read it. It's very hard to find. There was a small pamphlet put out by a guy named Gavin Semple called Spare Parts that was kind of zine distributed, I think in the 80s or 90s, and where he talks about Spare system. But I still think that Spare is just a little too much. And that might be good. You know, it's like maybe people shouldn't dig too deeply into it. You know, I've heard some pretty hair-raising things about people working with Spare stuff, but no one has ever fully understood Spare. I don't think anyone's ever fully understood Crowley, for that matter. You know, I was talking to Alan Chapman about that, who has a new book coming out about that, and he agrees. I don't think Crowley has ever been fully assessed, and it's a different reason for Crowley, which is that he wrote so much. You know, it's like Crowley wrote as Peter Carroll pointed out, Crowley wrote too much, and Spare wrote too little. And Crowley's system and references to even more works are so vast that it's kind of hard to figure out. It's hard to, or it's not necessarily hard, but it takes a long time to get your head around. And Spare is too not two. You know, like these are I'm not, these aren't criticisms, by the way. These were the methods that both of these men chose to teach, and so who am I to say? But Spare is purposefully obscure, not to be weird, but I think to work on the sigil principle. So you read and observe Spare at a deeper level. You don't use your conscious mind. Jacoba says, enjoy the level of articulation present here. Awesome. Elizabeth says, every time I read or listen to Spare, I feel lulled to sleep. Would love more Spare next week, says Frauder. Okay. Imagination, thank you for becoming a member. And Ben says, AOS is very Rimbaud-esque. All right. I'll hang out for just a little. We just need one more. There we go. Ryan is pleasing himself. Very good. We got our 10th super chat. All right. Well, cat mukbang video it is. And I am being blinded by the sun. So it's like Nosferatu. The sun, it is blinding me. So lots of love, everyone. Good to see you. Make sure to like and subscribe. We will be back sometime in the week, presumably, with a gory hour. And then we'll be back with Spare for the next Sunday service. And like and subscribe, hit the notifications bell. It really helps the channel. Even if all you do is like and subscribe, it really helps. But definitely consider becoming a member. Thank you for everyone super chatting. And of course, you can take courses on magic so you can do it yourself instead of just hearing about it at magic.me, magick.me, the world's greatest school for magic, mysticism, and the occult. Go check it out. You can learn everything there, from chaos magic to meditation to mysticism to Kabbalah to astral travel and lots more. magick.me, where you too can become a powerful sorcerer and master of reality. Yeah, Ari Freeman says, Spare paintings, I bet there's a lot there. Phil Baker, his biographer, suggests there have been a huge number of private buyers of his art over the years. Yeah. Phil Baker's biography is good, by the way. Maybe I'll tell this story next time because it's a really bizarre story. I met the biggest Spare collector in England through a series of bizarre coincidences. And when I was over there as a student, and that's where I saw most of his paintings. As far as I know, he was the biggest collector, and then the second biggest was John Balance from Coil. So, all right. And now that Balance is dead, Jeff Rushton, now that he's dead and Sleazy is dead, I have no idea where those ended up. By the same token, a lot of Brian Geison's art is probably in storage units, lost somewhere. And Marjorie Cameron's art, she burned while she was tweaking quite a lot of it. So a lot of this art is possibly waiting to be rediscovered. All right. Richard says, woo. Jacoba says, take care, Jason. Thanks for today's sesh. Ari Freeman says, to understand Spare, you have to learn to draw. I'm working on it. Awesome. And Frauder says, thanks, Jason. All the best. All right. Cheers, everyone. Have a great rest of your weekend. And I will